We went on a road trip, baby. We really did go on a road trip, y'all. I'm being silly, but we really did go on a road trip. We went on a road trip to clean cemetery headstones. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, some tips, some advice, how we did it, that kind of stuff. Were you happy with the trip?
Oh, I was absolutely happy with it. I know when I brought it up, you kind of looked at me like I was crazy.
Yes.
But I think it was a good idea.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Here we go. All right, so we went on this road trip to clean cemetery headstones. So I think we probably should start by talking about why we did it, or why you came up with the idea, because it was weird to me.
Well, when I first approached you about it, you did kind of give me the side eye about, are you like serious? And I was.
But before you go on, the reason I gave you that side eye is because you don't do cemeteries, and you are on record on this podcast as saying that I don't do cemeteries.
No, that is correct.
So
you are absolutely right. I've said that multiple times.
Yes, I just want the people to know. So, okay.
So
right,
yes. Originally, I thought this was a good idea, just because that's one of the ways that we can honor our ancestors. And when we did that podcast earlier last month, that was one of the things that we talked about. And then we did another podcast later on in the month. And I thought, it's Family History Month, was in October. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do to honor our ancestors, was to just go and give our ancestors and our family headstones a little TLC, because they had been out there for a while. Nobody that I know of had ever cleaned them, and I thought it would be a good idea.
Yep. And so we decided, since we were going to where a lot of your family is buried, we decided we got to drive by there anyway. So
yeah,
we'll stop and take care of the ones at, I guess it is, my family is buried there, but it's not a majority of my family.
I mean, it's some of them.
It's some of them. So this is the new part of my family that I just learned about over the past couple of years.
Yes.
And those headstones needed some attention.
Yes.
Because they have been there since the mid-40s.
Correct.
And so those things hadn't been touched in, what is that, like?
Over 70 years.
80 years.
75
almost,
years. Something
almost
like that.
80 years. Mm-hmm. So it definitely needed some attention.
Right. And, this is, our family, and this is their final resting place. And I want it to look nice. I want, when people are out there, even if they're not, visiting and paying respects to my family, they're going to walk by there. And I want them to be able to read their names, know who's there, and not have a question about, I wonder who that is right there.
And then you have to realize too, is that there could be family members out there doing the same research you're doing. You just don't know it yet. Then they go out there, and now they're able to read the inscriptions and be able to actually see the information, and it looks presentable.
Correct.
So
yeah,
I think that was cool. Anyway.
Yeah, it was hard work. But it was definitely worth it. And the end product, which is really not the end product because you'll hear about it later, I was completely amazed.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was hard work. I think the hard part for me was just getting up and down, from the ground.
Yes.
So that was hard.
Yes.
But the work itself of cleaning the headstones, to me, wasn't that difficult.
No.
Especially the ones in Newport.
Right. So let's just say that the majority of the one, actually well, all of them but one in my family at the cemetery that we went to were the flat headstones.
They lay flat on the ground.
They lay flat.
Yes.
So we did have to like kneel, and we did some light pruning around it to make sure that we were able to get the sides of the flat headstone and get it scrubbed as well. So there, in my opinion, there was a little bit of work involved.
Yeah. And some of them were really bad. So they needed to be, washed a little bit longer than some of the other ones. So yeah, that's just kind of how I felt about it. So,
and if you, I'm sure you're going to put the last podcast that we did about the cemetery cleaning kit in the notes.
Yes, for sure.
So I just want to go and say what we used and what like my star of the kit was. You want to go first?
No.
No? Okay. Well, you kind of mentioned it. I took one of those gardening kneeling cushions. And that for me was, aside from the product that we used, that was the number one star. But aside from that, the kneeling gardening cushion for my knees was the standout star of everything that we used for me.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely helps, especially in a cemetery that, a lot of cemeteries don't have grass. It's just dirt and rocks and tree limbs and things like that. And, getting down on your hands and knees, that would hurt. So I think that was great. And I'll just say, really, everything we talk about today were stars to me because they all worked great.
Well, yeah.
For what they were, supposed to be used for.
Correct.
So the kneeling pad was, that's fantastic.
Right.
For sure.
But I think that, going into this, I knew we would use the scrub brushes. I knew that we would use the, scrapers. I knew we would use all of that. But I knew I would use the kneeling cushion, but I didn't know just how great it was going to feel. And I'm not young anymore. And so it really did help me be able to get up and down in a timely manner.
I'm just glad you thought about me and brought one for me. So that's all I'm happy about.
Well, I remember when I put that on the list, you did kind of give me the side eye, like, you seriously need that? And I was like, yeah, I need that. So, but yes, that was the breakout star for me. So obviously we went to clean headstones. So we needed some kind of brushes to scrub the headstones with. And we had to use nylon soft bristle brushes. Make sure that you're not using any metal brushes or anything like that, because we don't want to actually harm the stone. We want to clean the stone and leave it in better condition than we, found it in. So you don't want to do any harm to it. So you can get any kind of scrub that you would use in your kitchen or your bathroom. You don't have to spend a lot of money on these scrub brushes.
Yep, and I would make sure that it's natural bristle brushes and not like a kitchen brush or a brush like you would use to clean dishes with or wipe dishes off. You just want to be careful and pay real close attention to what you're buying and what you're using.
Yeah, and you want to make sure you have different sizes. You want a pretty large brush, like, about the size of your hand. And then you also want some smaller brushes to be able to get into the letters and the numbers and things like that, to be able to get all of that out with a smaller brush.
For sure. That thing was a champ. You have to have that. You really wouldn't think that you need it, but you definitely need it because it worked great. And like I said, at my family's headstones, those things are 80 years old.
Right.
So inside the letters was a lot of moss that, just built up. And mainly because it sits right up underneath a tree.
Right up under a tree.
So that stuff gets in there. And some of the letters are deeper than others. And so you really got to get in there and brush. And what I found was helpful was that you brush in the direction of the letter.
Yes.
And that worked really good.
Yeah, that did. Also, we had a water sprayer. We had to bring our own water also for rinsing. So we just brought gallon-size water bottles. But we also had a sprayer where you put the water in and you can spray it and it goes by a little faster and you have more control on how you're rinsing the headstones off.
Yep. So this sprayer, you want to go to Walmart or Lowe's or wherever you want to get it from. And it's those pump sprayers that you use to spray. A lot of people use it to spray like grass fertilizer or pesticides or stuff on their yard or in their garden or something. It's those things. So you have to pump it to build pressure up and then spray. So that's what you want to get.
And then also we had one of those shower caddies that I used to use in college, just to be able to put the brushes and everything. I had gloves, everything in when you're going from headstone to headstone. When we were at your cemetery, they were right next to each other, so we didn't really have to get up and leave. But when we went to my cemetery, we had a few that were right together, and then we had another few that were on the other end of the cemetery, and that way we could put all the brushes and everything in a little caddy, or you can get a bucket and then you just carry that and you're watering your sprayer, and then you're not juggling a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep, and that was so helpful because we only had to do one trip.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go back and forth, and it was easy to just throw that stuff in that caddy. And we had a bucket, but we used our bucket for trash. And then we put things in the bucket too on top of it, but it's just so much easier to do. So definitely want to do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned we had trash in the bucket, and that was from peeling the top off the water bottles, dirty gloves, paper, things like that.
Any trash that's in the cemetery,
because you don't want to litter. You want to keep everything clean. So yeah, we had a bucket for trash, and then we had the shower caddy that had all our stuff in it. And the gloves that I used were just kitchen gloves that you would use to wash your dishes with. You just used regular latex
or whatever it's called.
And that's just because you're on the ground in the dirt with water, and I like to protect my hands, so I use gloves.
Yeah, and having that caddy and bucket makes it easier to travel with too. If you have to go long distance, like we did,
right?
We had to go to a cemetery that was 2.5 hours away from home, and then the second cemetery was another hour and a half, almost 2 hours. Yeah. So it made it really easy to travel with too. And
another thing that I didn't plan on, but I always keep in my car, are wet wands or wipes that you can, because again, you're down on the ground, you're dealing with this biological solution to clean, and once you get to scrubbing, I mean, it can go everywhere. So I had to wipe off my arms, and it was it was fall, but we're in the South, so it really wasn't fall, so it was still hot. So it's just good to just, be able to just get a quick wipe down with your arms, your hands, and, you feel refreshed afterwards. Yeah, those wet wipes worked out really good because I had all that dirt and stuff on my arm from when we were scrubbing. It just, it just pop off onto you. Yeah, because I had to clean my glasses. I had to do a lot. Yeah. So that was basically everything that was in the kit. Can you think of anything else? Did we talk about water? We did. I said that we got the gallon. I didn't say how much we got, though. Yeah, I think we should talk about that. Okay. So we initially took 1 gallon of water, right? Yes. And thinking that was going to be enough. And then when we got there, I was like, I don't know. And so we ended up in the first cemetery, we only did 2 headstones. And one was a big one. Yes, and these were not flat headstones. Yeah, these were upright. These were upright, and one of them is probably about 4 feet tall. Yeah, 3.5, 4 feet. And then the other one is
a little small one, probably 1.5 feet tall, because it was for a baby. But still, it was more than a flat headstone.
Right.
So that 1 gallon was not enough.
We made it enough.
We made it enough.
We should have had more with us for that trip.
Yep. So before we went to the second cemetery, we stopped at Walmart, and I got 4 gallons of just regular water from Walmart.
Yeah.
And we ended up using 2.5 of those.
Yeah, we did 7 flat. Well, 6
headstones.
flat and 1 military.
Yes. And so it was a lot better knowing that you had enough water, that you felt, good enough that you could leave.
Yes.
Or that you could spray enough to get all the solution off.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think that was pretty much everything in the kit.
Yeah, I think that was
The only thing we haven't
everything.
talked about is the biological solution.
Yeah. So let's talk about this.
The ACE, the star,
Yes.
everything.
So, okay. All right. So I think we probably should, slow down just a little bit.
Okay.
Because we haven't been back to look at the results yet. So, did it look good when we cleaned it? Yes.
Absolutely.
But that could have just been from that's just dirt. It's just dirt coming off. The question is did it get better over time? Especially on those ones that was just very, very bad. Mm-hmm. So, was it good? Yes. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just going to reserve my final take until we go Thanksgiving and look at them. So, anyway, okay, I said that. So this solution, I first saw it a couple of years ago at the AUX conference. You've heard us talk about AUX
Yes.
a couple of times. It stands for Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. At their conference, they had a panel of people who spend a lot of time in cemeteries, and there was one guy that did a demo of this solution in a cemetery. I think he was in Texas, and he went through and showed it, and I was like, okay, I got to get some of that. Even though we didn't have any idea we was going to be.
Oh, no, because at that time I didn't go to cemeteries.
Yeah, we had no idea we would be using it, but it just looked so good. And it was like, man, that would be something just good to have just in case we need it for something. And so a couple of years went by. We never got any. And then Trisha got some.
Yes. With the intention of, because we had done the podcast about how to incorporate other people who aren't genealogists into your research. And one of those was cleaning headstones. And so the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to actually do it myself. And so I ordered some.
And so what is it's called? D2 Biological Solution. Yes.
Yes.
So I'll
The
put
letter
a link,
D and the number 2.
I'll put a link to it down in the episode notes. And then you can watch our YouTube channel. We did a YouTube video of all the work that we did. So I'll put a link in the description of this episode as well. But talk a little bit about the solution and why it's safe enough for cemetery headstones.
Okay. D2 Biological Solution. It is a biodegradable, easy to use liquid that removes stains from mold, mildew, air pollutants, anything like that would stain a headstone. In our case, a headstone. You can use it on marble. You can use it on granite, limestone, masonry, terracotta, stucco, concrete. This is the same solution that they use at Arlington Cemetery. Well, all the military cemeteries, but I say Arlington because I know everybody knows what that is. And this is also the solution that they use on the White House to keep it white. So the premise of it, behind it, is that you spray this solution on a headstone or whatever it is that you're trying to clean. You let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you lightly scrub it with, one of the natural brushes that we talked about. And then you rinse it off, and you will be completely amazed at the transformation, because I knew some of my headstones were dirty, but then I thought, okay, well, all of them aren't really that dirty. But after we used this, I was amazed at just how dirty these headstones actually were.
Yeah, because one of yours looked black before we cleaned it, and it's actually blue.
It's blue, and it has, of course, it's looked black
crazy,
the whole time I've ever seen it, and I just thought that was the color of it, but it's not. It's actually blue.
Yeah. So there's also another method to it as well. You can also just go to the headstone, spray the D2 solution onto the headstone, and leave. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. And over time, it reacts with the environment and everything, and it continues to clean over time. And that's the part we don't know about. Because we did do that on one of them.
We did do that on one. The thing to remember, if you are planning to do something like this and use this solution, make sure you look at the weather, because you want to make sure that it's not going to rain at least 12 hours after the application, whether you're doing the 10 to 15 minutes and scrub and then rinse, or if you're doing the spray and leave. Either way, you want to make sure it doesn't rain within 12 hours.
That's correct. And you don't want to do it when it's too cold or too hot. So
45 degrees, I think is what they say.
I don't remember what the temperature scale is, but when we went, I think the temperature that day was like in the low 70s.
Yeah, it was.
So it wasn't really hot. Yeah. It was a very nice day. But you definitely want to make sure it's not too hot or too cold when you're using it. So you don't need much.
No, you don't.
So don't go buy a bunch.
Yeah, unless you have a lot of headstones.
Unless you got a lot.
But no, what we did, obviously, the scrub method. So we would, again, this is why we needed the amount of water that we needed, because you want to wet the stone with water, and then you want to spray the D2 biological solution, let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes, and then do your scrubbing, and then you want to rinse. And then you can also, rinse and then scrub a little bit more and rinse again, because it's still continuing to work. Like if you can see in the letters that it's still a little dirty in there, even after you've rinsed it, you can still scrub a little bit more, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about just a few other tips that we want to pass along. I think the one thing I want to make sure people know is when you go to do this, make sure that you are only cleaning the headstones that belong to your family.
Yes.
You do not have permission to go and start messing with other families, other people's headstones.
Right.
You can do it if you have their written permission.
Yeah, or if you talk to the caretaker at the cemetery.
But you do not want to go off and start cleaning other people's headstones.
Right.
Definitely don't want to do that. And then I'll also say is before you start cleaning, you want to test the stability of the headstone if it's an upright one. And even if it's a flat one, you never know, those things could, come loose over time. But you definitely want to just make sure that it's steady, make sure it's not moving. You want to make sure that it's not crumbling. Whatever it's made of is not coming apart. If any of that is the case, I would tell you to use the method I just talked about, where you just spray it and leave.
Right.
Don't touch it, spray it and leave. But if it's sturdy and stable and can handle being cleaned and with the brush and all that stuff, then have at it and go to cleaning. So
yeah, and I just want to point out and say what not to use.
yeah.
Like I said earlier, no metal brushes for scrubbing. And although it sounds like a good idea to use a pressure washer, you don't want to do that. That's actually too strong and could actually damage the stone. So you don't want to bring a pressure washer with you. And of course, you don't want to use any type of bleach on any type of headstones.
And to add to that, you also don't want to use any household cleaners.
Correct.
Any dishwasher soap. Don't use Dawn. You think that Dawn cleaned the little duck who was in the oil and stuff on TV. You don't want to use that kind of stuff on this.
No, you want to get something that is made for headstones or the material that the headstone is made of, i.e. the marble, granite, limestone, things like that. You want to make sure it's made for that.
That's why this D2 is really good, because it is a biodegradable solution, and it is chemical free.
Right. It's safe for the grass. It's safe for flowers.
So
it's safe for the animals.
Yep. So you definitely want to go to the website and read about it before you buy it and learn how to use it.
Yes. And I'm so excited because I had watched videos for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, of people using this biological solution and how they would spray it. Sometimes they would spray it and leave it and come back 2 or 3 months later. And sometimes they would spray it and scrub it and you could see the difference. But I was always amazed about just how clean this solution was able to get these headstones. And I was just as amazed when we did it for ourselves. And I'm sure you'll put some before and after pictures below. And it's just amazing.
Yeah,
I'm totally obsessed with it.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we're going to go back and do some more, because I have family that's buried in other cemeteries around Central Arkansas. So,
if the spray it and leave it method works as good as they say it does, I might not need my little gardening kneeling cushion.
I mean,
because that might be the way to go.
Yeah, you might not. I kind of feel like doing the way we did it is actually brush it and clean it, because you get that surface dirt off of it.
True.
And stuff, and then you let the D2 clean the stubborn stuff that can't, or it's harder to come off with the brush. So that's kind of how I feel. I think you probably should use it. Obviously you can do whatever you want to do, time permitting and things like that, but anyway, anything else, Trisha?
No, I just think that this was a better experience than I ever thought it would be. I totally recommend anybody who's interested in doing anything like this to definitely look into this solution and learn more about it.
Yep. You definitely want to go to our YouTube channel and watch the video that we did when we were on this trip and cleaning headstones. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because we're getting ready to start doing more content on YouTube. We're going to eventually, if I can find space in this house, to actually record our podcast.
Yeah.
And so you'll be able to see us while we record and
that is going to be,
see how crazy Trisha is.
Really?
So I'll put the link to that down in the description notes, as well as the D2 solution and the link to our last episode where we talked about going on this trip. So, all right, guys, we appreciate you for listening. Tell a family member, tell a friend about us and what we're doing on our podcast. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcast from. It doesn't matter. You should be able to find us there. All of our social media is down in the box below, and that's about it.
Thanks, you guys.
We appreciate it. You guys take care and
Stay
have a good
safe.
one.